Welcome! You're watching the Thrift Store Rundown, celebrating 5 years of bringing Hollywood home on a budget. Just because we're spending yet another summer indoors does not mean we have to give up summer blockbusters, especially since film critics are still spending summer in their sweatpants too, busting the chops of the filmmakers who give us bad summer blockbusters. Speaking of which, I got some chops to bust with the people who manufactured one of the worst and yet best-sounding soundtracks I've ever bought in 5 years. That's later in the video. But first, the late Roger Ebert got some major balls in busting the balls of the directors, writers, producers, actors, and actresses who all took part in a collective, generation-spanning, full-fledged assault on his cinematic conscience. In other words, contained in this Andrews McNeil publication, published in 1999 and picked up for $2.99, is a list of over 200 of the films that he hated. I think it's best if we let him, from the great balcony in the sky, aka his desk at WLS-TV ABC 7 Chicago in 99, give you a sampling of some of those 200 plus films that he hated, and thought you would too.
I hated this movie. That's a statement I've made many times while leaving the screening room, and now here are some of the affronts to my taste, my intelligence, and my patience that inspired my revenge in some hate-filled reviews.
Class, what is our motto here? Flashy, not trashy.
Beautician and the Beast. Okay, there is something charming about Fran Drescher, I suppose, but it's not her voice. She's a taste I might acquire if she ever made a silent movie. We're supposed to believe she can tame a savage dictator with her viper nails and day-glow stretch pants. Armageddon is such a raucous, ugly assault on the senses that no matter what you pay to get in, it's worth more to get out. It's nothing but an action trailer that lasts almost 2.5 hours. My doctors all managed to treat me without wearing a red clown nose, but maybe they haven't seen Patch Adams. Robin Williams plays a medical student who wants to heal both mind and body in this shameless tearjerker, and his method for getting a dying woman to eat is to entice her into a wading pool filled with spaghetti. Never mind how it must taste after both of them dance barefoot in it. Now, welcome to Spice World, and what can you really say about 5 Brit singers whose principal diversity is that they have different names? The plot is a day in the life of a pop group, a clear ripoff, of course, of A Hard Day's Night, but the Beatles had talent, and the Spice Girls could be duplicated by any 5 young women chosen at random while standing in line at Dunkin' Donuts. I'm told that 5,000 singing and dancing cockroaches were used while shooting Joe's apartment, and what upsets me is none of them were harmed during the making of the film. Beethoven 2 stars a couple of St. Bernards in love. These dogs are so smart they check out drive-in movies for free and even get their own popcorn. So how come they're not bright enough to take precautions so the lady canine doesn't get pregnant? Mercury Rising is set in Chicago, where an autistic child has deciphered a top-secret code and is in danger for his life. My theory is, if a 9-year-old can break your code, don't kill the kid, kill the programmers. Assassins is a movie that raises some interesting questions, like, how does a guy hanging outside a cab that gets hit by a bus not get hurt? Or, how do you survive an explosion that blows you out of a 3rd-floor window just because you're holding a table in front of you? Or, if you've got a briefcase with a bomb in it, would you toss it away from yourself as soon as possible or wait until you found an alley with a handy dumpster? Volcano is a flimsy excuse for a disaster film with a volcano that's out of sight in the sewers under the city. The ads say the coast is toast, but they should say the volcano is Drano. There is one consolation about seeing these terrible movies. The moviegoers have to pay to get into the theater, but I get paid to sit there, and then I get to give them lousy reviews. I'm Roger Ebert, ABC 7 News.
So with that, let's tear right into I hated this movie to find out how Roger Ebert tears into the mindsets of some of these hapless amateur filmmakers. The films are presented in alphabetical order, yet, for semi-obvious reasons, I'm going to focus on the films that start with the letter F, because if he were to grade all of these films by the letter grading system, like the grades you would see on report cards in school, well, the most generous rating he would give would be a D+. Then it would go down to a D, then D-, and of course...
F's for everybody!
Yep, F. So we start here with Father's Day, directed by Ivan Reitman, starring Robin Williams, Billy Crystal, and Julia Louis-Dreyfus. Billy Crystal, I should say. Made in 1997. This is the format for the beginning of all of his reviews. The listing of the director, leading roles, actor, actress, actor. You get the idea. And, of course, the year of the film's release. This film, again, was made in 1999, so do not expect any films made beyond that year to be included in here. And as for his usual rating system, the way he rates any film in his writings for the Chicago Sun-Times is different from the reviews that he would give on his TV shows, Sesko and Ebert and Robert. I grew up around the Ebert and Robert era, Richard Robert, on the Chicago Tribune. He would give thumbs up on the show, but in this book, he uses his star rating, and the maximum rating would be 2 stars. Then it goes down from 1.5 stars to 1 star to half a star to the ultra rare 0 star. Like, for example, Frogs for Snakes, directed by Amos Poe, starring Barbara Hershey and Harry Hamlin, made in 1999. It's not a film so much as a filmed idea. Well, with an idea for a title like Frogs for Snakes, directed by somebody named Amos Poe, do you have any inclination as to why it's earned a 0 star rating? And really, one collective train of thought you'll have when seeing all these reviews, or a good chunk of them, is that even though you could assemble top-tier talent behind the scenes and, of course, in front of the camera, if they don't do no earthly good with the screenplay, well, you're gonna find a review like this in a sequel called Your Movie Sucks by Roger Ebert, which was actually done, and I'm on the hunt for that book. And hey, there could be other books just like this by some of Roger's mentorees, the people that he mentored over the years, to give reviews like these. And of course, glowing reviews of the films that really do deserve 5 stars. Like, I would give 5 claps, the maximum rating around here, for any item that comes my way, which is exactly what I'm going to give this book. I'm showing you the F films in here, like Friday the 13th Part 2, Friends and Lovers, Forces of Nature. Fun fact, the first film released by DreamWorks SKG, and Fools. But again, they're all listed in alphabetical order, and if you see a film that you actually like that's featured in this book because Roger Ebert didn't like it very much, well, you might be surprised or might not be surprised. Your ratings might be different than those of Roger Ebert's. He might have steered a film that you enjoyed. Like Armageddon, for example. Mother enjoys Armageddon and so does Jeff, yet he didn't really like it very much. The Beautician and the Beast is not really a good example about that. Fran Drescher is hot, but her voice, well, sounds like earwax being removed by some sort of dental machine, to paraphrase Roger Ebert. Oh, and about the title inspiration for this book, well, that comes from his review of the film North, a Rob Reiner film.
I hated this movie. Hated this movie. Hated it. Hated every simpering, stupid, vacant, audience-insulting moment of it. Unquote. And so on. Altogether, I used the word hated 10 times.
I hated this movie. Hated this movie. Hated it! Although you can't use the word hated 10 times on the cover of this book because there's no room, so 3 will do you just fine. One of life's great pleasures is watching a really good critic tee off on a really bad movie. This book is wonderfully entertaining. Roger Ebert makes some of the movies sound so awful that I now want to see them. And it's not just North that he hated. It's also Christopher Columbus the Discovery, Jaws the Revenge, The Volcano, Message in a Bottle, Emmanuel, The Joys of a Woman, Lake Placid, and The Jackal. More skating than a thumbs down, more inflamed than Bunny film in an overheated projector. Such are the reviews that Roger Ebert has penned about bad movies. I hated this movie. Collects more than 200 of his most biting, sarcastic, and funny critiques selected from those unlucky movies that garnered a rating of a mere 2 stars or less. This retailed for $14.95 in the US and $22.95 in Canada. Oh, and Mad Dog Time, the first movie I have seen that does not improve on the sight of a blank screen viewed for the same length of time. It should be cut up to provide free ukulele picks for the poor. That's how insanely funny these reviews are. No matter what review you might find in here of a movie you like or hate, you can agree that Roger Ebert's reviews are scathing yet civilized. He takes no prisoners, pulls no punches. He takes some cheap shots. He says himself in the introduction that he caves into the cheap shot every once in a while in his reviews. You might identify some cheap shots for yourself. I think he's just doing this all fair and square, simple and straightforward, and yet insanely funny to boot. I tell you what, when you review a film like Roger Ebert, and you find it to be so boring that you start writing a to-do list of what to do after the movie, pick up groceries, make dinner, clean up your room, while you're trying to review the film on paper, you know that a movie is extremely boring, and that a review like any of these reviews can wind up in a book like Your Movie Sucks, or another sequel to this, maybe even a prequel, or what about a trequel? And yeah, I just made that up, but hey, there could be such a thing as a trequel, and I so hope there is such a trequel for this, because this is a book that you will love, love, love. If not for the reviews of the films that you love, that Roger Ebert hated, then for his biting, witty, sarcastic, and always humorous to a fault commentary, which made him one of the most household staples, if not the household staple, in film criticism. Hey, he's the only film critic to have won a Pulitzer Prize for doing such an act. So, it's definitely a book that you will love times 3. Now to a soundtrack that I hate. And that's surprising considering that it's by the maestro of the gods, John Williams. Yes, I am reviewing his soundtrack to the film The Patriot, his only film scoring assignment for 2000, one that landed him an Academy Award nomination for Best Original Score, one of 3 that the film itself received, in addition to Best Cinematography and Sound. Did you know that John Williams was actually not Roland Emmert's first choice to score The Patriot? His longtime British collaborator in music, David Arnold, wrote some sketches for The Patriot, but they were ultimately rejected by Emmert, leading to the dissolution of their partnership. So what is a German-born film director who's more action and VFX-driven and story-driven to do about a truly American sound for a unique American story about one of the most tumultuous times in American history, especially considering that his British and brilliant at that music collaborator quit and will not be able to work with him again? Well, you call upon America's composer to deliver the goods, John Williams. And by all accounts, the maestro of the gods delivered a properly pastoral and patriotic sound to The Patriot that nobody else could have done. David Arnold scored Godzilla and Independence Day, 2 really good scores. I would have liked for him to score The Patriot, but after hearing John Williams' compositions with Mark O'Connell's violin solos, well, I don't think anyone else could have done justice to this 70-plus minute album here. And story-wise, it's one of Emmert's most admirable works yet. And yet, the album, with 17 tracks in it, sounds so horrible, it's unthinkable. Why does it sound so horrible? Well, you obviously can't blame the maestro here. You can't blame the Hollywood Studio Symphony Orchestra. You can't blame his longtime music editor Ken Ronberg. You can't blame Sean Murphy, who recorded and mixed the score at the Streisand Scoring Stage in Culver City, California, at Sony Pictures Studios, named of course after Barbra Streisand. So who is to blame for this? And why does it sound so horrible? APOGEE Electronics is to blame, and as evidence, I took about 15 seconds worth of audio from the soundtrack played on my desktop computer while I was recording the Columbia Pictures in-credit logo at the end of The Patriot, because if I didn't take this footage which you're about to see and more importantly hear now, you would not believe me. So take a look, but more importantly, take a careful listen. You heard that, right? It sounds like either tape recorder playback hiss or those record scratches that EDM music producers use and often manipulate to the nth degree whenever they're making their beats. It has no place and an Academy Award-nominated soundtrack, let alone one created by John Williams, or any film soundtrack for that matter, with a sound like this that's uniquely pastoral, colonial, and, according to some folks, too American for its own good. Maybe that's why John Williams didn't take home the Oscar. The Patriot didn't win in the other two categories either. But you gotta give it up for Roland Emmerich for making the right call in selecting John Williams to score The Patriot, because he really did deliver the goods. Apogee, by the way, means the pinnacle, the highest climax or culmination of something really good. So with a name like APOGEE Electronics, you expect that company to give this soundtrack the respect that it deserved. It did not, and you just heard why. So I will not be buying anything from APOGEE Electronics ever again. Although if you read a lot of reviews for the Patriot score by John Williams, different copies of the soundtrack deliver a much clearer, crisp result. And that's thanks in large part to Ken Ronenberg, music editor, and score recorder and mixer Sean Murphy, two of Williams' regular collaborators. This is a joint release of Centropolis Records, that's Roland's in-house record label, and Hollywood Records, and it was picked up for $2.49. I will be on the lookout for other copies of the Patriot soundtrack, and if I do find them, and they play with a crisp, clear result, this album will be destroyed. In the meantime, I hate to do this, because this is definitely my new favorite John Williams score, and I own a couple of them. But because of APOGEE Electronics' horrible job at the manufacturing and processing of this soundtrack, I have no other choice but to give this an extremely low score. But before I do so, I want to give to Roger Ebert with a nod heavenward as he joins Gene Siskel, his other late collaborator, in reviewing the newest releases this weekend up in the great balcony in the sky. The maximum of 5 claps, which again is TSR's standard signature rating for any good item that comes here. And this is more than just good. This is just pure cinematic awesomeness. As for The Patriot, well, APOGEE Electronics, I want people to get a good look at you. And I want to remind them to never buy a soundtrack that you manufactured again. Because the quality on this sucks. It gets 1.5 out of 5 claps, and I'm being very generous with the extra half a clap because, well, it's John Williams, and it's my new favorite score of his. Any other film score soundtrack that sounded this horrible would have gotten 1 clap or even a half a clap. I can't give it 0 because in good conscience, it did play completely without too many stops and starts. And one last problem. Sometimes while you're listening to this straightforward, the audio leveling actually drops down significantly to the point where you might not even think you're hearing it to its fullest volume anymore. APOGEE Electronics, you suck. Period. Well, that's my ruling, but because this is a Roger Ebert related video, I can't just leave on that. It's kind of a split decision here. We have a thumbs up for the book and thumbs down for the soundtrack. And in a lopsided twist to this dual review, 6.5 out of 10 claps total. Well, if you enjoyed this review, why don't you go all Sesko and Ebert and Robert on me and give this video a thumbs up, maybe even 2. And of course, if you own either of these 2 items and want to share your thoughts on them, and if you have any requests for any reviews you want me to tackle in the future, hit up the comment section below, and if you want to join the Hollywood Bargain Hunters, make sure to subscribe. That's gonna do it for me, but now we finish with story time with Pickle Boy. Kid behind the camera will tell the story on how his mom, Angry Grandma, met Mel Gibson outside of a Charleston, South Carolina hotel close to the set of The Patriot. Needless to say, Tina gives fangirls everywhere of the older Destination a bad name. Oh, as far as the reviews for The Patriot go, don't get me started on the so-called film critic David Manning, the critic who never was, who gave film critics across America a bad name and Sony Pictures a real black eye. Thanks for watching, and until next time, the thrift store is closed, and the balcony is getting a paint job. I'll catch you on the thrift side. Take it away, Pickle Boy.
So Mel Gibson was in Charleston. They were filming the movie The Patriot, and we went downtown where Mel Gibson was staying at his hotel. I'm pretty sure Mom was just going downtown to meet Mel Gibson. You know, the news is, oh, and Mel Gibson's in town tonight filming for his new movie The Patriot. And the first thing that we see directly across the street from Mel Gibson's hotel are these tents, and they're set up in the middle of a park, and they got all of these Civil War reenactors, you know, just for the movie, and they're all dressed up in their costumes, and they're all eating and talking, and me and Mom are just looking around. Mom's going, where's Mel at? I need to see Mel. Mom's just looking everywhere she can to find Mel Gibson, and then she spots him. Mel Gibson is leaving his hotel. There are other people around the area. There are people taking pictures, and Mel Gibson's walking to a limousine. Mom is about for me to my back door to Mel Gibson, and Mom goes, hey, Mel! And Mom just takes off running. And I don't know if Mel Gibson heard her or, you know, if his security was alerted, but all of a sudden, the security sort of getting closer to Mel Gibson. At this point, Mom is about a foot away from Mel Gibson. And she's going, hey, Mel! And she's trying to reach through security, and she's trying to get him and trying to talk to him, and he's smiling at everybody. How you doing? He shakes Mom's hand. Mom's trying to push her way through like a psychopath. Like, I'm pretty sure Mel Gibson thought he was about to die, because Mom is going, I gotta get to Mel! And Mel's going, Mel makes a face when Mom gets past the security, her elbow gets through. You see Mel go, and so he shakes Mom's hand. It's very nice to meet you. He shakes Mom's hand, and Mom goes, I'm never washing this hand again! At this point, Mel Gibson goes, okay, and he gets into his limousine, and he starts banging on the side of it. He starts going, pa, 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 and the limousine speeds off. So that was the time Mom met Mel Gibson. She saw him outside of his hotel, she pounced at him, and she started reaching through until he got scared, got into his limousine, and he sped off. Of course, years later, Mom would tell you a very different version of the story, as it always seemed to change when she told people. She transformed it that she sort of stalked and bum-rushed Mel Gibson and scared him into speeding into his limousine and leaving. And it sort of changed into, Mom saw Mel Gibson, he comes up to her and he says, it's very nice to meet you, shakes her hand and leaves, which that motherfucking shit didn't happen. Mom, Mel Gibson did not approach you, say it was nice to meet you, smile at you, and then leave. He was scared to death because you were scaring him. So Mel Gibson, if you see this, and I doubt you will, you're too busy being anti-Semitic, but if you see this, we're sorry. Didn't mean to scare you. Didn't mean for my mother to bum rush you and make you think you were about to be killed. Because you didn't die, you finished your movie, and you probably tell people about the woman that almost tried to kill you in Charleston.